Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's instalment of Talk Pensions and Benefits. I'm very excited to be joined by Allyson Gayle today. Allyson heads up risk and healthcare at Premier, and we're here to talk to you about diversity and inclusion across the employee benefits industry, which is something that I'm very interested in. I know a lot of our viewers will be. Allyson, thank you so much for taking part and being here today. You and I have already had a little bit of a conversation before we started recording today and the other day about diversity and inclusion. Why, to kick us off, why do you feel like not only is it such an important thing, but it's finally getting perhaps a bit of traction and a bit of attention that it really needs to have?
Yeah, no, firstly, thank you for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure. I've had a phenomenal time in the EB industry, risk and healthcare. I entered in the early 2000s, and I'd had fun doing it and come across some fantastic people that I've learned from, who are completely edifying and supportive and doing that. And I think, as a, dare I say it, relatively young Black female, it's incredibly important to recognise talent, irrespective of creed or colour. And I actually feel like we need to change the norm. There is talent out there that I think, the industry is potentially missing out on. And to create change, we need to start somewhere. I think the environment that the world is in at the moment, and, the US, there's so much going on in the US at the moment, and whether we like it, loathe it, or we're indifferent, we're driven by the US, heavily influenced by the US in terms of, trade, lots of things, culture. And as bad as the situation has been with Black Lives Matter and all the things that have happened over the last 12 months and beyond in hundreds of years of history, whether we like it or not, it's a fantastic opportunity to raise awareness for the BAME community, the wealth of intellectual capital that the BAME community offers, and to give everybody an equal chance, and for everybody to be themselves in an environment where they feel they can be themselves.
And yeah, and that's a fantastic point, and I've certainly made a number of comments in the past about being a father to three daughters. So I don't want anything to hold them back. I want them to smash as many glass ceilings as they possibly can throughout their lives. But I'm a little bit ignorant to all of this because I grew up in a, middle class area. I went to a grammar school. I'm white, I'm male. So what do you feel is the main step, or at least the first step, that people should be taking, whether it's a company, whether it's a team manager, a divisional manager, or whatever it may be? What steps should they start taking to try and make those positive changes?
Really good question. Really good question. And I think, to sort of, share your experience. I also grew up in a middle class area, in a middle class background, and went to private school and then went to grammar school. The difference here is the stereotype that people expect my background to come from. So when you take that approach, you think, actually, because I look how I do and maybe I talk how I talk, there's already a stereotype there without even me doing anything. And I think it goes back to that inclusion, people being able to be themselves, regardless of their colour, religion, or socio-economic background. On that point, leading on to that point, I think, the first thing is change. It is learn, okay? And to learn, you need to be educated, okay? And for me, where an organisation ought to start is it needs to come from the top. It needs to, the board, the senior leadership team, really need to buy into it and understand why it's quite important to them as an organisation, okay, and what that's going to drive. And once that buy-in's there, my thoughts is that you need to look at your policies, whether that be, you know, your HR policies. Also, you want to be looking at where's your learning and development? What does that look like? Also, your talent policy, how are you drawing that in? And if I look at talent, because talent's the place to, you know, the primary place to start is that, you know, when you're looking at your talent strategy, which obviously entails how you recruit people, how you drive recruitment, it's how are you making sure that you've got a wide spread of candidates coming in? Mm-hmm. How are you making sure when the candidates come in, whether that be CVs, if that's your first port of call, how are you making sure that you are ruling out unconscious bias? When the candidate comes in and you go to first interview, what questioning skills are you using? Are you asking the right questions? So I think there are some fundamentals and some really quick wins. And I think once you've then got people on board, once you've looked at your talent strategy and you've got people on board, what are you doing about learning and development? How are you giving everybody a level playing field to excel, mm-hmm. to grow, to develop? So I think for me, fundamentally, those are your baselines.
Yeah, and you talk about unconscious bias, and this is something that as a recruiter, you know, we've seen a lot more of over the last couple of years where, you know, if we send a CV, we put, you know, a particular summary of the candidate, you know, and we simply put, you know, he, she, or they took a career break for maternity leave or whatever. We would see it as being quite innocuous. But then we've got clients that are saying, actually, can you remove that? Or can you make it gender neutral? Or if they have been on maternity leave, can you actually just specify that it's a career break and don't say anything else? Can you take their name off it? You know, can you remove any kind of details like that almost give away where they might be coming from in terms of gender, in terms of, you know, anything like that? And we're sat here thinking, well, we only care about the candidate because obviously we want to find the right candidate for the role based on skills and experience, and we want to fill the role. But it's becoming more and more apparent and important to us to understand that in terms of a talent strategy. So, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and obviously really interesting to see it kind of outside looking in. From your perspective, we talk about you being in the industry for quite a while. You've obviously been with Premier for quite a while now, 10 years, I believe. You're in a senior leadership position. Do you feel that inspires people from the BAME community, or, you know, female members of staff joining the business because they can see you at the top table? Is that a part that you really want to play and you enjoy inspiring others in that position?
Absolutely. And at Premier, it comes from the top.
Yeah,
it's driven by our chairman, Alistair Ed. Okay, and that's how it needs to be. It then sits on the board. The board have got the buy-in. I sit in the senior leadership team meeting, and then it cascades. I'm not the only woman that sits on the senior leadership team. No. I'm not the only individual, okay, from the BAME community. On the board, we have a female, you know, a female on the board. We have young, old. It's completely diverse, and that is what that is our culture, and that is what we are trying to drive through our organisation. Ultimately, what we want to do is be successful. We want to attract the best people and retain our best staff, and to do that, we're creating a diverse and inclusive environment to be able to do so. What that does, people are able to be themselves, and when people can be themselves freely, you get the best out of people. And that's exactly what we try to drive and what we are driving. I'm incredibly proud to be part of that. And I don't feel like I'm a statistic, because it's not about a tick in the box. We live and breathe this stuff in everything that we do. We live and breathe this stuff in how we operate, how we treat our clients, and how we understand our clients. It's incredibly important that we're able to understand our clients, and that's part of it. lots of our new clients that are coming on board are asking about our diversity and inclusion position. And you'll find, Tom, that I'm sure that when you get new intermediaries or brokers or, that you want to work with, they may very well ask you what your diversity inclusion policy is, because you need to be an equal match. There's no point if we don't have the same beliefs and drivers, there's no point in us working together.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm incredibly proud to do, and I lead the diversity and inclusion at Premier, alongside some strong ambassadors from all walks of life, whether that be people with disabilities, people from various communities, people of various ages. I have various people that help and influence and shape our strategy for 2021 and what we're trying to deliver as an organisation.
Mm. No, and that's another excellent point as well. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's not just gender, it's not just religion or background, it's everything. And like you say, it doesn't matter kind of who you are or where you come from, it's feeling comfortable to be yourself, and having that not tolerated but encouraged, and let's celebrate Christmas as much as we celebrate Hanukkah, as much as we celebrate Ramadan. It's having that.
To be blunt, I'm sorry, it's not even about tolerance. It's
No.
about, I'll go back to it, understanding.
Yes.
And if you understand, what Diwali's next, you've got Hanukkah, you've got Christmas coming. It's understanding what that means to those cultures. Somebody once told me a great way to think about diversity and inclusion. Diversity is inviting everybody to the party, which is quite easy to do. But the inclusion bit is, how do you get everyone dancing at the party? And it may be that you have to play indie music 1 hour. It may be you have to play rock the next, and it may be you have to play reggae the next. But you're getting everybody up and doing something at that point in the party. And that is a great way of looking at what is diversity and inclusion. So it's for me, it goes back to, Tom, it really does. So it's not about tolerance, it's about education. If you understand how important these things are, and if somebody says to you, do you know what, it could be somebody in my team that says, I need to take X off to do whatever, and I might say, for example, one team leader might say, well, no, you need to do this project, and I might say, well, actually, no, I get it, because you need to go and do X with the family for whatever cultural reasons or whatever. It's that education piece. You're able to, you're able to create change, create understanding, create trust with your employees, and they are freer and understand that as an employer and the person who works for values me, respects my culture, respects my religion, respects, my colour and the things that I have to deal with. And therefore, do you know what? I'm happy. I'm going to deliver what I need to deliver. And that, from a board level, is exactly what the board wants. They want every productivity. If someone's happy and feels inclusive and motivated, it has so many beneficial results. It's a why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get involved in diversity and inclusion?
No, definitely. And I love your point about education as well. I loved it when my eldest came home from school one day, and, we're not particularly religious as a household, but she came home and she told me that they'd been learning about Hinduism that day. And she told me so much, so many things I didn't know, not because I didn't want to know it, not because I was sat there saying, you're white, you only learn about Christianity, any rubbish like that. I loved the fact that she was telling me all about it, and that's a great starting point for her. She's 6, or she was 6. It was that, let's learn all about that. And then what's next week? It's Judaism next week. Let's learn all about that, and let's build up that understanding that people do things differently, but that doesn't make it wrong. That doesn't mean they should be persecuted or pushed to one side or not invited to the party, like your analogy. It's embracing it because it makes us richer for it, so that's a great point there. I mean, do you feel we talked, earlier about, and you mentioned it there, about being driven by what happens in the States in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, the death of George Floyd, which was the trigger to a lot of things. And in terms of their culture, in terms of their sports, we're going to be driven by that. What are your thoughts in terms of looking at the media? There does always feel like they're the ones kind of setting off a grenade a little bit and almost stoking the fire. Do you feel like perhaps one of the steps needs to be that a lot of things get reported a bit more accurately, a bit more fairly? I mean, are you sat there reading stuff, feeling that way and getting a little bit angry and frustrated at that?
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. Actually, I think there would, at some point you just think, the media will be the media. They are, they are a necessary evil, in my opinion. And I think more recently, over the last couple of years, there's different varying camps, isn't there? The BBC will report things in one way, and Channel 4 will report things in another. And if you read various tabloids, they will report the same thing very, very differently for various reasons. So you have to think about that first and really take that on board. Yes, there's frustrating things that I read, but I think over and above, I think the advantages of whether it was good, bad, and different, it was topical for once. And everybody that I certainly spoke to, or everywhere you looked at one point, it was the Black Lives Matter movement. And that to me is the biggest thing that we've got out of it. The next thing for me then was, how do we continue to ride the wave positively and educate and create change moving forward? How do we drive that forward? And that, I think, is the mountain to climb. And I'm encouraged because there are still various things going on. And I say ride the wave, and there's no, guys, I can't think of any sort of another analogy. But it's keeping that momentum, keeping that engagement, keeping that drive throughout the UK, whether it be north, south, financial services, or not, any industry, and drive that change. It's not going to happen overnight, Tom, but it's that education piece. And it's not to forget history either. History needs to be told, whether we like it or not. It is quite disturbing, but by telling history, again, we can create change. It doesn't happen again. And people only can make the informed decisions on what they know now. So those things that happened in history were wrong. There is no ambiguity about that. But let's not let it happen again, because we know more now.
Yeah, totally. And history is a massive passion for me. Anyone that knows me knows that I've loved history since I was at primary school. I studied history at university because I just wanted to know more. And my particular fascination is World War II and the Holocaust. And I remember visiting the Auschwitz camp and did a tour and, tried to understand it as best I could. And there's a plaque there that says very clearly, "He who forgets history is destined to repeat it," or something very similar to that.
Right.
So true. Because it's not saying we're going to draw a line under this and we're going to forget it. It's understanding that the moment we forget it is the moment these things happen again. So we have to keep learning about it and learning from it. How did this lead to that? Why did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And like you say, using that to drive change for the better. And, we go back to media. One thing that I did read earlier was an article about the new 007. The new 007 is going to be a black female. And you've just got to look at the comments on Instagram and on Facebook about how awful this is and how we're catering, we're pandering. And the article was actually saying that the character of 007 was going to be a black female. 007 is the moniker given to James Bond. It's not saying that James Bond is going to be a black female, because James Bond is James Bond. It's actually going to be 007, the agent, is going to be black and female. And it was the reporting, it was the headline that suckered enough people in to get them that riled up. And you think, you've just got to actually read
media at its best, Tom.
Educate yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I look, I get it. It doesn't mean I agree with it. And I think you're always going to have individuals that, you know, don't like change, and aren't willing to educate themselves, aren't willing to see the richness in diversity of other cultures. You know, for example, you know, Greek Cypriot friends, Turkish Cypriot friends, and understanding that dynamic is a whole nother ball game. But so much so, understanding my friends better. You know, my Greek Cypriot friend can get really riled up about the situation in Cyprus, the divide in Cyprus. And as your friend, you go, yeah. But because I took a step back and thought, let me understand the history and understand, doesn't mean I agree with it. Don't get me wrong. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but understanding the history of the divide there, I can have an educated conversation with him and understand where his gusto, understand where his pain comes from, but give him some balance on that. That's the difference. Going back to the 007, educate yourself, because 007 is just a rapper. The individual is the individual. The 007 bit is just, you know, as you said, the moniker that goes, and it's that. And again, I can't stress it enough. For me, it goes back to that nucleus, education. And if you educate yourself, you learn. And then we just open up, like, and you know, the richness that you can get from that is unbelievable. But it is going to have to be a collective move forward to do that.
Yeah, definitely. No, I totally agree on that score. So, and so to put it to you, you know, as a leader professionally and in your personal life as well. If I sat here and said, we talk about Black Lives Matter, and if I sat here and said, well, actually, all lives matter, which so many people did, what's your response to that? How do you feel about people making that?
True. All lives do matter. And I'll put this really simply, bluntly, directly, very, very, very succinct. All lives matter. But right now, Black Lives Matter. Period.
There you go. Yeah, no, totally. And I suppose final couple of questions from my side. You know, one of the hurdles that holds back women particularly is when women start families and they then go part-time. Perhaps they're then overlooked for particular promotions, or they then find it difficult to feel included as part of a wider team if they're only in 2, 3, 4 days a week. What steps do you feel like could be taken, or what steps have you taken in the past to make sure that that inclusion is there so that no one is held back, whether they're part-time or doing flexi hours, or they've got a family at home and they need to rush home to collect little one from school or anything?
Yeah. And I think you touched on it as well. Diversity is not about age, colour. You know, diversity is about lots of facets. And I actually feel like, you know, it's a woman's right, it's a man's right to have a family, anyone's right if they want to have a family, to do that. And I actually feel like, again, just being quite direct about it, I think that, you know, to have that old fashioned view, dare I say it, of, you know, somebody's gone off on maternity leave for a year, and they've been out of the business, so on and so forth. I actually feel like that, and I'm strong about this, that the amount of intellectual capital that gets lost, the skill set that gets lost because of that, oh gosh, they're on maternity, they've been on maternity leave, or they've got children, you know, they can't do the 9 to 5, is unbelievable. So I kind of, we at Premier kind of turn it on its head, in that actually those individuals that have chosen to have a family, okay, so really plan their time, or, you know, making a decision to do what they want to do because they want to, you know, continue their I don't know, bloodline or whatever it may be, create a family and so on and so forth. Why can't they work and have professional aspirations like anybody else? I feel like you can, you know, if you are a diverse organisation and a forward thinking, if you think about it, even now is probably a prime example, is in that, you know, kids are going to school between, you know, in working hours or nursery hours or whatever. Okay, so why don't we change it so that those individuals can log on at 5 and, you know, finish at 9, so they're still able to grow from an aspirational career perspective. So you're again creating opportunity, okay, and giving diverse people, you know, the opportunity to grow and develop their careers, but also the business that itself is able to grow and be profitable at the same time. For me, think about it differently. Don't lose out on that intellectual capital. Don't lose out on that skill set just because the norm says, oh God, they've got kids at home. And it goes back to, Tom, oh God, no, such and such, you know, I will say this, Carl Brown in Brixton. Oh, nah, in my head, bias is telling me, does that make sense? It's just change the norm. Think about
totally.
it very, very differently.
And I think, again, as recruiters, you know, we've seen that's probably been the one major positive to come about through this pandemic, where you've got companies that perhaps have been a little tunnel vision in the past, didn't want to be too flexible with hours or home working or whatever. Now they've embraced it. They've seen it works. So like you said earlier, what's to stop someone logging on earlier before the kids get up?
There you go.
And then logging on when they're at school, and then maybe doing some work in the evenings. Likewise, like you say, flip it on its head. You know, it doesn't have to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And if you think like that, you're gonna really, really miss out on some excellent people that just want that bit of flexibility. They don't want to shirk their responsibilities. They don't want a free ride to the top. They just want to have that flexibility to be able to demonstrate their ability and do the job.
So I also think that if you get your culture piece right, if you get your recruitment policy right, you'll start attracting those people. So you're not missing out on the diverse talent pool out there, because you've got a narrow kind of way of recruiting people. And therefore, if you kind of think that way, you'll then be known in the industry for your culture, your great culture, and how you deal with your staff, and you'll start to attract people. So dare I say it, Tom, your job won't be needed. They'll come straight direct to the organisation. And ultimately, you know, with my strategic hat on, that's what you want.
Well, it is a genuinely fair comment. You know, it's that if word spreads, it's a small industry, isn't it? You know, how many people have said that over the years? And if word gets out that you are inclusive, if word gets out that you are diverse, and that is part of your culture, not something nice that you stick up on LinkedIn, you know, that is ingrained in every level of your business.
Absolutely.
People want to work there. It is going to kind of negate my role a little bit. Hopefully not too much, but
not in totality. But on the flip side, if you find a candidate that is right for my organisation, somebody else's organisation, you're probably going to hear, "Oh, I know them. They do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, great. I'd love to go and work there or have an opportunity there because they do this," or you know, and I really like that. I feel synergized to that. I feel connected to that. And that's, you know, again, the flip side, not the flip side, but another positive for you is that, you know, working with organisations that do have their diversity and inclusion policies and ethos and culture down pat is great for you, because it's easy to get candidates in there and for you to win.
Definitely, it's an easy sell. You know, if you're speaking to someone, like you just said, you're speaking to someone about Premier, there's obviously posts on LinkedIn. They might know people that already work there. It's an easy sell because they can see that. If there's a company, you know, down the road or up in town or wherever it may be that doesn't have that, and dare I say, maybe even word has spread that they're actively not so much against it, but that is a big hurdle to get over if you go into that organisation. Which one are they going to choose? You know, and it's a no-brainer. So, what a comment to finish on. Allison's basically doing me out of a job, saying that I'm going to be redundant in a couple of years. So thanks for that. But no, I think there's some excellent points there, Allyson. So thank you so much for taking the time. Excellent insights. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening.